All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the whole world of project management. All those formal frameworks and toolkits that professionals use to take these huge, complex ideas and actually make them happen, hopefully on time and on budget.
But you know what? Let's start with a problem I think we've all felt. Why do so many projects just fail? Whether it's launching a new app or building a skyscraper, how many times do they miss the deadline, completely blow the budget, or the thing they build just isn't what anyone wanted? It's super frustrating, right? Well, that exact problem is why formal project management was even invented in the first place.
So here's the plan for this explainer. We're going to see how this whole field went from total chaos to a real profession. We'll look at the organization that basically wrote the rulebook, and then we're going to open up that toolbox and see what's inside. We'll hit the big ones, the core constraints every project deals with, and wrap up with how to manage all the people and processes.
First up, how did we even get here? For centuries, people have been tackling huge projects, but there was no standard playbook for getting it done.
And what's so wild is that while people have been managing incredible projects basically forever, think about the pyramids, the whole idea of project management as its own separate job is actually pretty new. It really wasn't until the 1960s that this big push started to make it a real professional discipline, separate from just being an engineer or an architect. The big goal was to create some consistency, a shared language for how to succeed.
And that push to professionalize the whole thing? Well, it led directly to the creation of one main organization to set the standards.
And that organization is the Project Management Institute, or PMI for short. And get this, it started back in 1969 with just 5 volunteers who wanted to share what they were learning. That's it. Fast forward to 1984, they launched the PMP certification, which created a real professional benchmark. Then, a few years later, they published their big guide. And today, there are over 500,000 PMP certified pros all over the world. That's a pretty incredible journey from 5 people in a room to a global standard.
So what exactly is in this big guide they created? Let's crack it open and take a look inside what's known as the PMBOK toolbox. Honestly, this is the real heart of the whole PMI framework.
Okay, so PMBOK, it stands for a Guide to the Project Management Body of Knowledge. Now, here's the key thing. It's not a super strict step-by-step instruction manual. Think of it more like a massive dictionary or a reference guide. Its whole point is to give everyone a shared vocabulary and a set of concepts that have been proven to work. So when you're on a project, everybody is speaking the same language.
And its influence? It's huge. We're talking over 1 million copies out there in the wild. It's even been adopted as a standard by major engineering groups like the IEEE. So yeah, the PMBOK guide has pretty much become the global blueprint for how to manage projects right.
All right, so what's actually in this thing? Well, it all starts with these 3 fundamental pressures that every single project manager has to deal with. They're so important, they're often called the iron triangle.
The first side of that triangle is scope, and this is all about getting crystal clear on what you're doing. A good scope document defines exactly what work the project will include, and, maybe even more importantly, what it won't include. It's all about drawing that line in the sand. And here is exactly why that clarity is so important. We've all heard of scope creep. It's like the silent project killer. It happens when all these small, innocent-sounding requests get tacked on during the project. Hey, can we just add this one little thing? And before you know it, all those little changes have eaten up all your time and your budget. Having a rock-solid scope document is your best defense against that.
Okay, the second side of the triangle is time. And this is way more than just picking a deadline out of thin air. It's about building a realistic, step-by-step schedule that actually maps out how you're going to get from A to B.
And building that schedule is a really logical process. First, you create what's called a work breakdown structure, or WBS, which is just a fancy name for a to-do list of every single task. Then, you put those tasks in the right order, you estimate how long each one's going to take, and then you build the final schedule. And what's cool is this process helps you find the critical path. That's the longest chain of tasks that literally determines the shortest possible time your project can be completed in.
And the final side of the triangle, of course, is cost. This isn't just about the final price. It's about estimating, budgeting, and then controlling all of your financial resources through the entire life of the project. To make sure you don't run out of cash before you cross the finish line.
But hey, managing a project is about so much more than just juggling that iron triangle of scope, time, and cost. You also have to manage all the other moving parts, the processes, and let's be honest, the most important part, the people.
So beyond that triangle, the PMBOK framework lays out a bunch of other key areas you have to keep an eye on.
There's integration management, which is kind of like being the conductor of an orchestra, making sure all the pieces play together. You've got quality management, which is all about making sure the final thing is what you promised. Risk management is about looking for trouble before it finds you. And procurement, well, that's how you handle all your outside vendors and contracts.
And then you have the human element, which, let's face it, is often the trickiest part of any project. This covers everything from getting the right people on your team at the right time to making sure information is flowing smoothly between everybody, and, this is a big one, actively managing the expectations of every single person or group, your stakeholders, who care about the project's outcome.
You know, a huge part of that human element is just communication. And that could be a massive challenge, especially with remote teams these days. The framework actually breaks it down into two main types. You have synchronous communication, which is live. Think of a conference call where everyone's there at the same time. And then you have asynchronous, which is when they're not, like sending an email. A really good communications plan knows when to use both. Now, it's also really important to remember that the PMI framework isn't the only way to do things. It's often compared to more agile methods, like Scrum. So what's the difference? Well, the PMBOK approach is fantastic for projects where you can plan almost everything up front, like building a bridge. Scrum, on the other hand, is way better for projects where things are likely to change, like developing software. It works in these short, iterative cycles called sprints.
Finally, in a lot of bigger companies, you'll run into something called a project management office, or a PMO. Now, some people might see them as just more bureaucracy, but their real job is captured perfectly in this quote. Their role isn't to get in the way and create red tape, but to actually help project managers succeed by giving them tools, training, and support.
So, there you have it. We've unpacked the whole toolbox, from wrestling with that iron triangle of scope, time, and cost, all the way to managing the processes and people that really bring a project to life. This framework is all about giving you the structure you need to turn potential chaos into a real success. And that really leaves just one question for you. Now that you know the framework, what's the critical path for your next big idea?